morning, everybody. I am so pleased to introduce for this panel Mayor Stephen Reed of Montgomery, Mayor Frank Scott of Little Rock, and also President of the African American Mayors Association, Mayor V. Lyles of Charlotte, and Rashaad Lambert, Senior Vice President at Forbes.
Good morning.
Oh, I have a mic. Okay. So as most of you know, the conversation about the new gym code is very important to me. We're no longer going to see a knee on the neck in broad daylight. The discrimination that could take place with unethical AI is real and with algorithms. And it's more important than ever that we bring more people of color into the economy. That's really what an inclusive 21st century economy needs to look like. And I'm pleased to have these guests on stage talking about what they're doing in their communities to create pipelines for people of color, entrepreneurs, people in tech. So much has been said about the infrastructure bill. And in fact, we talk about broadband, we talk about opportunities, there's transportation, everything else. But one of the things that we really need to discuss is, in terms of broadband, and we had this discussion last night, if we were to bring 5 cities online, we would reach 50% of the Black population. Memphis, Charlotte, Birmingham, New Orleans, Atlanta. We would add $5 trillion to the GDP. We just need some political will to do that. And it's going to take all of us. So I would like for each of you, starting with Mayor Reed, to talk about some of the opportunities that are taking place in your city to build a more inclusive economy.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. It's good to see everyone here. I think this is a very important topic that we address because it takes those of us in the public sector, I think, as well as those in the private sector, to really help drive change. And one of the things that we're doing in Montgomery is we're investing in Black tech entrepreneurs through our Tech MGM campaign. And one of the things, it's been a public-private partnership that we have tried to focus on innovators in this space who have been doing work, whether it be at one of our HBCUs or whether it's been those that are in other communities and are doing some work in Montgomery, to really give them places and spaces of which they can grow and scale their ideas and concepts. It's been very, very helpful, and it's one of the things now that has caught on statewide throughout Alabama, and even some of our largest companies now have come on board. What we've seen is that a lot of people talk about, DEI and SKG and all these things, but not as many people are truly committed to investing and practicing those things. And you have to hold people accountable. You have to kind of force them to put a mirror up to their face in terms of what their company is doing and what they can do themselves to assess. And I think one way that we have been persuasive in the argument is making it about economics and making it about equity and showing them what the potential is, just with a little bit of help from what we're doing on our side. And not just focusing for us on the tech piece, but also small businesses that may only have 1 or 2 employees that are in the service industry. How do you get them the necessary financial assistance? How do you get them connected to traditional banks and other means of capital? Those have been other pipelines that we've tried to establish. And what I found is that once we bring people into the same room, even in a city like Montgomery, which typically has not talked about profits as much as we've talked about politics, being the state capital, people see the opportunity and they see what they have been missing and what we can do together.
Thank you. Mayor Scott?
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. I think one of the things that you see here today as being the president of the African American Mayors Association, we often don't talk enough about how we represent the GDP. We roughly represent 1/3 of the nation's GDP. I'm very proud to be the president of the African American Mayors Association, as well as the mayor of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas state capital city. What we're doing in our city is to understand, one, equitable economics. And when you understand that, you have to have intentionality, innovation, and a true understanding of inclusion. Many times we've seen organizations and corporations truly want to focus on DEI as a fad. And so it's our role to ensure that we create and apply pressure to ensure that we move from this moment in time to a movement. And when you do that, it truly takes policy and true actions to ensure that we see this increase in diversity, equity, and inclusion within the business sector. One of the things that we've been able to do the city of Little Rock is really focus on our Build Academy, which stands for Businesses United and Leadership Development. Out of the pandemic, many of us received federal dollars to help our small businesses. We were able to leverage community development block grants to provide forgivable grants and loans as it relates to small business emergency assistance. When we tried to get these dollars out, unfortunately, we found that many companies weren't able to accept it because their books weren't in order. And so what we have tried to do and focus on through our Build Academy is how do we scale up existing entrepreneurs to help them understand there's more to operating the business than just going through the day-to-day, because if you truly want to go to scale, eventually you're going to have to deal with the bank and things of that nature. And so we provide this 12-week course to these entrepreneurs, one, to ensure that they get more business from the city, to ensure that our procurement dollars are reflective of the demographics of our city, but also understand that they have to continue to move forward. And so Build Academy has been one. Then two, we had to go even an extra mile to understand that many times there are many demographics within the minority community that still may not hear or feel as much as what the cities may be doing. And so what we were able to do with our Latinx community is to create Emprende. And Emprende is another form of Build Academy, but specifically for our Hispanic brothers and sisters within the city of Little Rock. Secondly, we've provided a mission of targeted community development to truly understand equity within the city of Little Rock, where we're providing incentives to encourage and spur more economic development in our low economic areas. And what we've been able to do with the past year and a half now is seeing that close to 55% of new businesses and new business development as it relates to building permits and things of that nature, because we created this intentionality, has come from those demographics. And so we're really excited about that. Again, sooner or later, we have to move from platitudes and protests to policy and action. And so that's what we've been able to do in the city of Little Rock. And then finally, from a pillar standpoint with the African American Mayors Association, which is led by our Executive Director, Phyllis Dickerson, who's out here somewhere, is to truly understand our pillar, is to truly scale up as it relates to black and brown tech, to increase black and brown middle classes within our nation. And that's what we plan to do. That's what we're working towards. And we truly see that as we continue to move forward together.
Thank you. Mayor Lyles?
Thank you very much. I just want to recognize that yesterday I mentioned that we have a mayor's racial equity program. And I talked a little bit about what we were trying to do for our HBCU. But under our equity program that we have changing the digital divide as a specific strategy, partnering with the Knight Foundation, our private institutions and corporations. I believe, and I'm going to look out here, and you've got the people from Charlotte that you can talk to in great detail about this. We created at one of our colleges the digital divide program to address this strategically. As a consequence of that, we're starting at the neighborhood level. We chose corridors of opportunity, not to be confused with the federal program, something that we defined for ourselves, where you saw the impact of discrimination from the past coming forward because we didn't see the development and the opportunities. And we started working with one of these corridors where we had high rates of violent crimes, where we had high rates of dropouts and high rates of a lot of things. And we decided we would change that by introducing technology in a way that's grassroots. And so choosing those specific areas, being very clear about the goals and objectives to eliminate the digital divide. We now have, I think, 50,000 laptops going out in homes that have been donated or provided by grant strategies. We've also tried to incorporate very much the seniors in our community. And we do that with individuals who work very hard in this community to say, how do we make sure that technology is not something to be feared, but something that you can embrace? And how do we make sure that every household has a way to do that? And right now, the city is waiting for the federal government so that they can pay for some of this. But we've chosen to go ahead and provide internet access to people in their homes, because that's the only way you can apply for a job. I mean, if you want to get a job in this community, I mean, Indeed's got a lot of advertising, you know that, because they're being very successful. And we've got to create our own path for employment. And that means, one, starting with our kids so that they can see the opportunities. We've got game designs, all kinds of things that are going on with kids that they just automatically take hold of. But with our seniors, we're talking to them how they can use that cell phone and how they can use that to contact and provide for their own needs. So that's our initiative. We're all about this over the next 4 to 5 years, eliminating the digital divide in our city.
Thank you. Actually, you know, Mayor Lyles, I heard that on LinkedIn, only 3% of the people on LinkedIn are of color, right? That's a really staggering statistic when you think about building an inclusive workforce and how we're going to find the right people, but they can't even get on LinkedIn if they don't have broadband. Exactly. Rashaad, we're so happy to have you because you're from the private sector, and we want to hear a little bit about your work at Forbes, and then we want to talk about how each of the mayors who are now, you know, they're the CEOs of America at the moment, black mayors, how they can collaborate with the private sector. Tell us about your work.
Absolutely. So first, I want to just touch on a little bit what you just said about LinkedIn. There's actually another stat. So while 3% of people are seen as like people of color, a lot of people on LinkedIn who are not identified racially is because they have removed their images, they've removed anything that will actually show what race they are, because they have been discriminated against, because they've applied for jobs and because of their name or because of what they look like. When the first thing people do, they look you up on like Instagram or Google or on LinkedIn, and when they see what these people look like, they make a decision about what they can actually do within this particular job role, which is not true. You can't really base that off of skin color. So that's the first thing, is that, and that kind of leads into how Forbes the Culture was created. So in 2017, I created Forbes the Culture to create more like equitable pathways for black professionals in the workspace. At that time, it wasn't that long ago, 5 years, as we're coming up on our 5-year anniversary, one of the things that we identified is that the ways in which we engage in business are different than what the status quo is or what the general public is. So we wanted to create a safe space for black professionals, black entrepreneurs, to be able to pool and share resources where that we can create those same like equitable pathways for the next generation. And I've heard a few of the mayors mention like Wi-Fi. One of the things that we are working on within, I'm not a mayor, but I'm from Philadelphia. And within Philadelphia, we are launching the PHL Gaming, which is a gaming conference that is for youth to help them engage, to do like digital mentoring, essentially. If you've ever watched any young person game, and you know the language and some of the things that come through the screen is not what you want to hear for youth. But we're working on a way to bring in these expert gamers to mentor them and help them, show them that, one, these guys are making millions of dollars off of this gaming stuff, and being able to turn this into a business, but then learn these skills like networking and teamwork and sort of working together. But they can't do that if they don't have access to the internet. And it's really interesting that in 2022, I'm sure that some of us here may be too young, but I used to watch the Jetsons, and I did not think the world would look like this in 2022. I had no idea that we would still be trying to figure out how to get something that is now a basic necessity. We saw in 2020 with a lot of young children going to school on the internet, and there was a lot of children missing school because they didn't have the internet. And while Zoom was provided as an option, it's difficult to get on Zoom if you can't get on the internet. So sorry, I just wanted to note that. One of the main things that we are working on now within Forbes the Culture is going into these cities. We have 20 chapters internationally, because this This organization started off national, but is now global at scale. We have 17 chapters within the U.S. and 3 that are like international, and we're working to go into these spaces like these 3 cities as well as others to launch these programming so we can work with the youth of tomorrow, because they are the new wave and next generation of entrepreneurs, and we want to provide the resources that they need to be able to become who they should be. So mayors that are here, of course, I've spoken to you. I would love to speak with you guys and talk about the programs that you have going on in your city and how Forbes of Culture can contribute to that.
Thank you. So I want to talk about 2 things. I want to talk about equity, and I want to talk about storytelling, right? When we talk about equity, it's like it's the biggest buzzword, as we all know. And then I say innovation does not always yield equity, right? So in New York City, we had City Bike for the last 8 years, and it didn't enter the Bronx, the poorest congressional district in the country, until the pandemic, right? And so that didn't really yield any equity for anyone. We didn't really force that or request it. I want to, Mayor Scott, you were saying that you're bringing on a new chief equity officer. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. We actually have brought on a chief equity officer. The city of Little Rock was the first in the state of Arkansas to not only have a chief equity officer to truly lead in our equity efforts, but then secondly, to create an Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, to truly staff it, to ensure that the city embodies what I would call a reflective economy and reflective procurement. But not only that, to ensure that our policies, all from a granular level, even from human resources, truly embodies and emboldens us to be an inclusive city. And so we're very excited that we were able to create that in the middle of the pandemic, to really start that process. It was one of our policy initiatives that we made a promise, wanted to keep that promise, and it continues to hold us accountable as leaders from as not as simple, but as complex as ensuring that everyone's getting paid what they need to get paid from a parity standpoint, and understanding how demographics play a role in that in regards to education as well. And so we've seen a lot of that from that standpoint too. Out of that came the Build Academy that I referenced earlier, the Imprint Day that I referenced earlier, and we continue to focus on those initiatives to understand too that many times, while equity is a buzzword, many people go to race, and 9 times out of 10 or 99% it has something to do with race. But truly, we have to show people and demonstrate the definition. There's a difference between equality and there's a difference between equity. And many times equity, as we all know, is a lack of resources due to a number of different socioeconomic reasons in history. And so as we focus not only on race and ethnicity, but we also focus on the resources, ensuring that the resources are going where they need to be at the right appropriate time, because we all understand that a rising tide lifts all boats.
Is Kim Desmond in the audience? I don't see her. Anyway,
Can I jump in?
Yeah,
there?
please.
On something my president said, and I like to say this in my city: a rising tide lifts all boats only if you have a boat, and if you don't, you drown. So it's important to understand, a lot of people don't have boats, and I think we forget about that. And so when we're making the argument as mayors to whether it be groups like this, companies that are here that are sponsoring this awesome conference, or even individuals back home, there's often a disconnect in terms of why we have to do something specifically designed for Black women or the Latinx community. There is really a question of, what are you taking away from me, as opposed to what are you bringing to the equation? And so we still have to navigate that in this environment. But I think the Biden-Harris administration has done a very good job through the Department of Commerce and Secretary Raimondo and Assistant Secretary Graves of really pointing out, what we're missing by not investing in communities of color, by not investing in Black and brown entrepreneurs and Black women-owned companies. It's not only costing this entire our city, it costs our entire economy. And so when we think about those things, we have to think about, all right, how do we get those people that we're leaving out, how do we get them to the table in order to help them? And oftentimes that means intentionality. That means doing things directly that are not politically correct, and that some may see as, well, you're targeting a specific group. Well, we are. It's no different than a marketer. It's no different than any of the companies here. You have a market segment, you do your market research, and you know who you're trying to reach and why. It's no different, for us as mayors. And again, I think if you substitute mayors for CEOs of cities, then you tend to understand that. It's not a matter of leaving, pushing out someone. It's really about who you're bringing in that has not been at the table, has not been in the circle before.
And even to add, yes, let's give him a round. Just to build on Mayor Reed, and I know Mayor Lyles, and I also want to bring in Rashaad on this conversation. Many times you have to understand, we as CEOs, we're elected by the people, right? Secondly, we understand we have a unique perspective being black mayors in our communities. One, we represent the entire city, we represent the entire community, but truly we also understand that we're here for a reason. We're here to address these equity issues, but many times people don't like it. And it has to not only be from a top-down approach, but also a bottom-up. And so as we see CIOs who are here today, one of the things that we don't see enough of are black and brown contractors as it relates to the broadband space, the technology space. But guess what? There are black and brown contractors. But many times, we don't get a chance because we are the CEOs. We're taking care of many host of the issues. We got to have our CEOs doing that work as well, ensuring that we go that extra mile in procurement, that we're really focused on how do we find and identify these individuals and not relying on, okay, we've always dealt with this company, and it's just comfortable to do it this way, rather than, taking a chance to go look and bring some other communities to that table. So that's one challenge I want to bring, particularly to the CIOs in the room. Mayor Lyles?
I like to really point out that one of the things that our community is doing is really using technology as a way to define the city's strategies and what need to be done. It's really important to have that grassroots engagement. And in doing that, that means we often can use this technology that we are gaining to be able to tell that story and to tell it in a way that, there are issues around people feeling like, well, why is that resource available here and not there? Well, I try to remind people that their opportunities abound, and all of the things, the analogies that we use about people being more successful, what you have to point out is that not everybody had that opportunity. I just basically I say my dad went to the military. He came home, he couldn't get a house, he couldn't get a college loan, he could just get a job preference. And if you acknowledge that and understand it, then you can start at a base of a conversation with people that may not understand what equity means. But the idea that I often talk about, if you owned a house after the war, that house is likely built you as a middle-class citizen. And when we weren't included, then that's a real difference. And so we tell our history in all kinds of ways and point out where we stood as an organization. We stand with equity, meaning that we want resources allocated to take care of the past history of loss of infrastructure, not really good education opportunities, and we are going to stand for that, and that is a value for a community. And we have our public sector, our private sector understanding that, and more importantly, we have people in this community that work on it every day, making it possible to change.
Rashaad, before you jump in, you're Forbes. Like, people read Forbes, and we talk about economics. Everyone's talking about economics, right? And storytelling is so important. Like, how can we use media? How can we have you collaborate with all the black mayors to start telling the important stories, to start getting interesting companies in the mix, to start profiling them? I mean, after the movie Detroit came out, Detroit had to hire a chief storyteller. Like, we have to own these narratives now. We're all going to look to you now to start telling these stories. Tell us a little bit about what we can do with you.
So I want to add on to what the mayor said first, and then I'll definitely get to that question. One of the things that I often say is that if you're not at the table, then you're on the menu, right? So a lot of before we get to resource provisioning and things of that nature, we have to look at the systems that are perpetuating this this inequity or this inequality, right? So when we look at a lot of these technologies or at the things that we are utilizing, they're not designed by people who look like us. We're not at the table, we're not in the room, but there are lots of black engineers. I'm sorry. There's lots of black engineers. There's lots of brown engineers. There's lots of people who could contribute to these things, but when it starts there, and then the technology is not created with us in mind, then we just come to the table as consumers and we're not able to make those same decisions. And the same thing with like storytelling. When we started Forbes of Culture, we were not a part of Forbes officially. It started off fully independent. Once we joined forces with Forbes, about two years into us building out the community, we were looking at what are the opportunities here to join forces with this larger organization and to start storytelling, to start taking control of those narratives and to tell the stories, just like these great mayors are sharing here. A lot of times, the reason why our stories are not told properly is because they're not talking to us; they're just writing about us from their own perspective. It's kind of the same way. Just to go back to the tech equation, there was recently an AI that was created within the music industry that was supposed to be a hip hop artist, right? And it was a algorithm that was created based off of a lot of hip hop artists or what they thought was what you want to see when you have a hip hop artist. Lots of stereotypes. I won't even get into it. That program was shut down because people were kind of like, why wouldn't you consult us? There was a guy that they brought into the conversation that they used his voice and they sort of modeled it after using his voice and modeled it after a bunch of people that were in like the hip hop game, but he didn't have any equity in that project. So he wasn't able to make any decisions. So they were basically telling his story for him. It was kind of like, I signed on to do this one thing and now it's like a switcheroo. What I want to make sure is that one, we are in the process of working on some very new and different things that you would not expect coming from the Forbes brand. That's one thing. And then the second thing is, within the way that black stories are told, we just need to make sure that we are talking to the people who are the subjects of these stories and to be able to tell it in a more fair way. It's not gotcha journalism. It's not about what's going to get the most clicks or which headline is going to make people share it the most, but actual good stories, because people do still read. I know you guys read, right? Yes? Okay. But just making sure. Just had to survey the audience. just make sure, because if not, we have a bigger problem. But because people actually do still read and will engage with a good story, we could just tell the story as it is. We don't have to sensationalize it. And I would love to work with these mayors and any of the mayors here to tell these stories and to figure out how we can get this, the technology and these programs that they have in the hands of the people who really need it the most.
You brought up the music app. I mean, discrimination takes place on TikTok, where most of the black creators are being pushed down and not at the top.
I mean, that's really in like any creative economy. Like black people are taken advantage of in any creative economy,
right,
because we are the driving force behind a lot of the creativity. So they take the IP, and because just like you were saying, just like we've all said, a lot of people don't know the definition of equity. So they don't really understand what it means to be involved in the conversation and to really take part in the creation and to live with something, even if you don't own 100% of it, to live with it throughout the duration of its time.
And I think too, Rashaad, when you talk about the table standpoint, is many times we're waiting to be invited to the table. And I think we have to utilize our unique and creative abilities to come to the table, whether we're invited or not. Because at the time when you understand the consumerism aspect of it, but also this creative economy, we being black and brown communities have to own that. And many times we're waiting for the invitation rather than just showing up.
Yeah. Christopher Wallace of Brooklyn said you have to kick in the door.
I guess we have to end on that one, right? Thank you all. And Phyllis, I think we have a collaboration here with Forbes. I'm putting it out on the stage right now. And then also, mayors, I would love for you to also meet Kim Desmond, who is the Chief Race and Equity Officer of San Diego. So they're doing some interesting work across the country, and I'd love for you guys to meet her at some point. Thank you all so much for this discussion, and look forward to the rest of the day. Thank you, mayors. Thank you, Rashaad.